Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back. No problem. There we go. All right. So I'm thinking tonight we may wind up scrapping everything and just start over again. Because ideally, hello, I want to put a firewall in place for our domain, right? And then have another Microsoft server that's simulating the ISP, right? So that we would have our connection between the WAN link of our firewall to the ISP and then out to the internet. So kind of kicking that around. But first, before I do any of that, let's just go ahead and pick up where we left off last time. So last time we finished with creating groups, or no, users, right? Did we create groups? Let's see. No, we haven't created any groups, but we did create users. We got our OU structure in place. We did create some additional organizational units, but yeah, we did create a user, maybe two. Nope, we didn't create IP admin. So let's create our IT admin account. So we're not using the domain administrator account. Later, we'll go on and actually properly break out some of, so that it's not a full-on domain administrator, because we really want to secure Active Directory. Let's see, we got, but having a domain administrator account isn't like a separate one that still has the functionality isn't the worst thing. You just want to use it sparingly, right? So got that. We'll open up the properties, come in, and domain administrator account needs to be member of the schema admins, the enterprise admins, domain admins. Should be about it, but let's check anyway. So we got domain admins, domain users. Yeah, that's fine. Administrators, enterprise admins, group policy creator owners, schema admins. Okay, so let's use our handy dandy snipping tool. Snip of that. And this is a good practice to get into so that you have settings. So you have reference that you can kind of kick off to the side. You can save the picture later if you need to. But really, when configuring things, it's great to have it so that you know what, you can look back at something instead of having to close a window, open a window. And if you start messing with like multiple property windows here, this can start to get just unwieldy and you'll lose track of them. Like, we could do this, right? So we could have them side by side and we could go member of, and we could do that and it works. But you do run the risk of actually losing these in the background. So like you'll click on something and then it'll hide it and you may not see it, or you may be on some other modal type window that you can't click off of. So however you really want to do it, I'm just in the habit of taking pictures with the snipping tool as opposed to, and just kind of kicking that off to the side because, I'm on my workstation, so I can put that on like another monitor and have it off to the side, completely freeing up, cleaning up the clutter on my workspace. So what do we need here? We need administrators. So need owner. Now what I'm doing, you can add multiples in here, but you need to use the semicolon. And then you can just click on names, especially if you get like the name, like if you're not sure of the name, but you got kind of a rough idea, like, okay, we want to add the schema something, right? What are our options? Schema admin. Oops. Sorry, I wanted to check names. And then it fills out the rest of it. It's like, okay, schema admins. There you go. All right. Or if we just kind of want to say, all right, what are the ones that start with SCH? Well, no, if it defaults, there's only one. So it's helpful. And you can add multiple groups. You just have to use semicolon, right? All right, so now that we've got that, we go back to here. We have our IT admin. Should have all of the rights of our domain administrator. We're going to use that account as opposed to the domain administrator. So we're going to go ahead and log off here. Get rid of this. We don't need this anymore. Switch users. So we click the back button, other user. The other thing about not using the domain administrator account, right, is that the username for the domain administrator account is administrator, which this isn't the best deal because this is, so we're on a domain controller, so that's not really going to just demonstrate what I want to demonstrate. But the thing is on other machines that are not domain controllers, when we type in administrator, and it's going to want to default to the local administrator account on the machine. So then you wind up still having to type in domain name and then administrator and then use the password, which is fine. But by not using administrator, when we type in the name, then it will still default to our domain. And I'll demonstrate that momentarily. So we get that because we do have to go in. We finish setting this up. Finish setting up server 2022. And we need to join our management workstation to the domain. So let's go in here, open up terminal. And on a Windows 11 workstation, when you open up terminal or even Windows 10, like the first time, it's going to tell you, hey, you can use this as the default terminal application. Just open settings and make the change. All right, so if we click on open settings, get a new tab. Awesome. And right here, right, so our default terminal application. Anyway, all right. So default terminal application, you can let Windows decide, or we can just come here and say Windows Terminal, click Save. There you go. We can close this tab now. So I think we set the IP address last time. We did. No. All right. So this brings me to another issue for setting up the lab, right? I don't want the Windows 11 workstation to really talk to the physical host. I just want it to talk to the other VMs. So if we come in Hyper-V Manager, right-click on the machine name, go to the Virtual Switch Manager. We only have the default switch, which isn't horrible per se, but not what we want. So we're going to create a new virtual switch, and we have some options here. So we have the external, and if we look at the default switch, that's the internal one. The external one would use the actual network card, right? So we're just giving it a straight link to a network card, so it acts, as far as it's concerned, it's just talking straight out to the internet. We don't want that, and we don't really want internal, because what's happening here is this is in the background is taking care of this, and it's Hyper-V is acting as a DHCP server, and it's also acting as our NAT connection, our network address translation connection. So we can have all of these VMs back behind, spun up on this, and they will all talk through the virtual switch, which Microsoft is saying, okay, I'm also going to give you an IP address, and then I'm going to handle how you interact with everything. So it can go directly out to the world right now. Right? So if we do, well, if I don't not click the wrong window, let's go back to put you back over there. Let's clear this guy up. Do ipconfig all so that we can get the DNS server, which is 175.2, 175.25, or 172.25.192.2. All right, and then 170. So our DHCP server, these are not addresses that we used when we set up our domain controller. Or is it? Yeah, it is actually. All right, I'm an idiot. Okay. I dumb. Wait. No, this is .2. So .1. Do that either. It's got to be, all right, you know what? Yeah, we're just going to create a new virtual switch anyway. So we got external, which is basically a direct shot out. We don't really want that. We got internal, which is our network interest, and we have private. Private creates a virtual switch that can only be used by the virtual machines that run on this particular computer, right? So all of these guys will be treated as they're on the same set network switch, but will only be able, the virtual machines will only be able to talk to the other virtual machines. Because if we use internal, then we can create a switch that can be used by the virtual machines to run on the computer and between the virtual machines and the physical computer. In internal virtual switch does not provide connectivity to a physical network connection. So again, yeah, basically this is just using network address translation, and Windows is basically handling all that in the virtual switch in the background. Says, okay, all of these guys talk to the host, and then the host will provide the internet connection and all that stuff. So we're going to go ahead and create. Then we're going to call this HV private. We're going to leave it private. That's good. We don't need to worry about the VLAN ID because we're not connecting this to an actual, we're not connecting the virtual switch to a physical switch. So changes, awesome. Boom, boom, boom. Da, 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 da. Here we go. Let's resize that window. 1. This one's still gotten a bit big for its britches. And it really shouldn't. Let's disconnect it and get it to a proper size because that looks weird. There we go. Oop. Back to the admin. The other part of it is because the fact that it created a new profile for the IT admin user. It's also why this is full screen again. As soon as it catches up. There we go. What's that? What's this guy? There we go. All right, now I got something to work with. Fantastic. All right. So I also don't want this one necessarily to talk. Yeah, I think I might just scrap this whole deal. Start fresh, because here's what I really want, right? I want the host, then I want the virtual machine that has the 2 network cards that basically does the outside. So like with a Cisco firewall is going to have 2 interfaces. It's going to have an outside interface, it's going to have an inside interface named. It's going to have more than those interfaces typically. Right? So if we Cisco ASA 5505 will work for now. It's fine. So if we look at the back, we've got, on this particular firewall, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ports plus console port. But when you're actually in the config, you're going to have an inside and an outside. Those are going to be named. You can set up the other interfaces how you please, and we'll talk more about that in a different video or at another point. But point being is that you're going to have an outside interface, you're going to have an inside interface, and then you're going to basically by default the ASA is going to say, okay, anything coming from the outside interface that I do not, or where I did not have something initiate contact, so I don't have an entry in my log of a computer making a connection out, and this would be return traffic. This is originating unsolicited. I'm not going to trust it, and I'm just going to drop it unless I have rules that allow it. All right, so it's going to have a 0 trust factor. We kind of want the same thing here, but mainly what I want is to keep all of this traffic on the inside, right? So like our DHCP services, all of that, I want to keep those on the inside. I don't want any chance of those running across over into the physical host and that network. I want this completely separate. So what I should do, as a matter of fact, That's what I'm going to do. Is I'm going to create a new virtual hard disk. Dynamically expanding, of course. And this is going to be our gateway operating system disk. I'm gonna leave it at 127. We got that. We're gonna go and create another new virtual machine. And this is gonna be gateway 01. I like it. Generation 2. Startup memory. It's 8192 megabytes. Now, this is 8 gig, but because of the fact that it uses the bit math is why it's 8192, right? So if we go into Google and we do convert gigabit megabit, take gigabytes, and then megabit. No. Wow. Way to prove me wrong, Google. Thanks. I don't like to use that converter anyway. So we know the normal bit math, right? Where 1 meg is 1024 bits. And again, Bing is just killing me here. But no. Thousand bits. Kilobits. Wow. You'd think that I'd just like learned IT yesterday from bytes. 1 byte equals 8 bits. Note to self, get better at explaining that. So anyway, the math works out 8192. Now that I've completely screwed that pooch up and just destroyed all credibility I might have anywhere else, it's fine. Okay, so we're gonna, this one is gonna be this machine here. So the default switch is actually gonna be the outside interface because from the ISP, you're going to usually get a DHCP connection where they're gonna give you a range of external IP addresses. So you're going to set one. So we're gonna use that, come in here, use Gateway OS. Okay, we're good there. Finish. Now we have Gateway 01. Go in and modify our settings. First order of business. Add a DVD drive. This is going to run server 2022. Temp ISOs. Hello. All right, so we got that. Apply so that we come up here and we can set the boot order so that we boot from our DVD drive first. Mainly, again, it will get there once it tries the Pixie boot, but it's waiting for the Pixie boot to time out that I want to avoid. And quite honestly, in production, when you're, doing this day to day, you're not going to want to necessarily spend time sitting there watching that, waiting for Pixie Boot to go, because you have other stuff to get done, right? All right, so we do that. Come in here. Half a gig is fine. We're going to max this out at 16 gig for normal. Leave our default switch. I can add, as a matter of fact, I probably will. I should just do it now. We need to add our other network adapter for our inside interface, right? And that is for our HV private. And check and uncheck use automatic checkpoints. Okay, we don't want to do anything here. We do want to try and gracefully shut down the guest, the virtual machine in the event that the host shuts down. Go ahead, click OK. Connect this guy. It's turned off, which, duh, right? So I'll start this installation and then I will go join the Windows 11 machine to the gateway or to the domain. Oops, I didn't catch it fast enough. That's what I get for not paying attention. No. Virtual machines, gotta love them, right? They're great when you get them set up. Installed. Republic. Yeah. Data center. Well, we're gonna 2022 standard. We are going to use the desktop experience, so we have the GUI. Accept, yes. Custom install. Drive 0, because it's the only option we have. All right, let's do that. We got that running. Some. Boom, boom, boom. Okay. Oh, look, Calvin and Hobbes. All right. Why am I thinking this? Yeah, I may have just left something. Okay, it's fine. Neither here nor there. All right, so we're still on the 172.25 subnet. We need to join a domain. Now you can come in here and you can right click and you can go into system. You can go to rename the machine, which actually isn't it. We have to click domain or work group. Go. And then we get our normal window where we can change it, and then we can change this to the domain. Did I join it to the domain already? I did. Well, this is what happens when you take a week in between sessions, I guess. All right, so we're joined to the domain already, which I would know if I looked at the DNS suffix, but whatever. Actually, I could just host name. Yeah, host name just gives me the machine name. Anyway, all right. Let's close that for the moment. All right. Now we're going to go into apps and features. No, do that. Get out, share cross. Maybe it's just apps. Yeah, it's just apps. We want to go to full features. No, it's optional apps. So it has to be here. It's anywhere, share across devices. Yeah, I don't care about that. Why am I missing this? What? Across the apps, more settings. Hmm? Yeah. Optional. Okay, so I was in the right spot. I just didn't go here. Don't wing training sessions. Actually, it does bring up a good point. So I have a friend that's also in IT, and he's CTO, CIO, something. Anyway, he's high enough up that he's gone in interviews, and he's called me up, and he's like, hey, I need somebody, and I'm thinking of you. And but we're friends, so we call, we talk, and we're chatting, and he's telling me about some of the interviews that he's had for like some of these other positions and stuff like that. And he's like, well, it's a virtual interview, and I can hear it's like a phone call interview initially or whatever. And he's like, and we ask a question, then I can hear the guy literally typing, like he's Google searching the answer. And he's like, I hate that. But my counter is like, well, I always come back with him. I was like, well, then you wouldn't want to hire me because I search shit all the time, right? Like, I don't remember all of it necessarily off the top of my head, or I think it's somewhere over here. And then turns out that it's not, just like this whole deal here where I completely doink that up, right? So, you know, I don't, and I keep telling him, I have no problem if somebody needs to look something up. At least they know where to find it, right? They have an idea what they're looking for. They know how to find it. They know how to get into the information. This is useful for when you don't like when you run into a situation where you don't necessarily like something, you're like, hey, what's this is totally new. Like what's going on here? And so you can actually, it aids you in your troubleshooting, so you can filter out some of the noise from the internet when you're doing a Google search and some of the forum noise, because you have the forum masters that come in and are like, oh well, you just click this and that and ta-da. And it's like, okay, well, where did you get to the magical window where you click this and that? Because you're calling it some other window than what it's actually named, because that's a common name somewhere that somebody come up with. So again, I have no problem with, if somebody has to go look something up on Google, an IT person, just so long as they're not following bad advice necessarily, just blindly, right? If you read it, know what you're looking at, that's fine. All right, so back to our install. So we want to install the remote server admin tools, and we want the server manager for one. We also want the group policy tools, DNS tools, DHCP server tools, And Active Directory domain services and lightweight domain. Because we want to be able to open Active Directory users and computers from the workstation. We do not want to have to go to the actual domain controller, right? We want to be able to do all of that from our management workstation here. So we're going to start with those. Go ahead, click install, let them install. But yeah, it's funny because, you know, like I said, we get into that conversation where he absolutely hates the fact that somebody has to go Google something because they don't have it. It's like, okay, not everybody has your recall ability. Right? They don't have that. My recall is horrible, kind of. But compared to his, it's absolutely trash. So I'm like, dude, I don't commit all of that. I know essentially what I'm looking for. I know it was called remote server administration tools. Easy enough to go Google it up and be like, oh yeah, okay, it's under optional features, which is, you know, and the other thing is Windows 10 and Windows 11, really. Windows 10 is going to go away in about a year, but Windows 11 is still kind of a shifting landscape as Microsoft comes out with their updates and decide, oh, well, we really want this other one. Case in point being, you know, when we go to set a static IP address, we have to come into Ethernet, and then we got public, private, you know, so we have to come in here and we have to actually do this. And this wasn't the case. This would just take you previously to the network manager. And you would be able to, you know, it would actually take you to network and internet settings, which is still there in the control panel. Dude. I can type. I can't. So yay me. So if we go into the control panel, we can still go to network and internet. Now we can go to, you know, network sharing, internet options, view network, connect to a network, so on and so forth. So if we go to network sharing center, okay, now we can actually go into the adapters. And this is where this used to take you. Well, it used to take you, well, not there. Good grief. Hello? I don't know why it opens a whole separate window. But, you know, used to be when you right click here, go network and internet settings, it would take you here, and then you could go into adapter settings. It didn't take you to the limited input screen where it totally changed it. So, you know, depending on where they're at, you know, whatever the machine is in the update cycle, you may go here, you may go somewhere else. In Windows 10, it may be in a slightly different, you know, it may still, again, depending on where it's at in the updates, you could potentially go to network and sharing as opposed to the whole weird kind of intermediary thing that they've got going on there. So that's fine. Like I said, you've got an ever kind of shifting landscape. And to retain all of that, I don't expect somebody to retain all of that off the top of their head. Because again, what you did yesterday may or may not translate into what you do today, depending on things like updates. So being able to go find stuff fairly quickly is more important to me than having the knowledge to be able to be like, you know, oh, well, I can quote pi to like 15 places. Who cares? Right? If you can find it quick enough for what you need, then that's fine. Now, if you spend 3 hours looking it up, that's a whole different kind of deal. So, all right. So anyway, now that we've got that going, and I've kind of gone down the rabbit hole, let's go revisit our gateway machine. Local administrator password, let it do its thing. I don't know that I want to do anything with this guy just yet. I think I'm just going to turn it off. shut that down. Come back, check on this. Now we are not going to join the gateway machine to the domain because we're wanting to simulate ISP equipment here. That's usually just going to be like a router on site, but you can't join to the domain. So we're not going to join this one to the Let's check in on almost there. So close. Let's go ahead and do that. Don't worry about the Windows Admin Center just yet. Save my OCD for a second. Name this machine to Gateway 01. Leave it in the work group because we're not joining it to the domain. Let's restart. Flip back over to Windows 11 machine. All right, so we have all of our remote server administration tools installed. Fabulous. So now, if we click on the start menu and we go to server manager, woohoo! Again, we're not going to worry about the server. We're not going to worry about the Windows Administration Center. That's a whole other topic in and of itself. Okay, so this looks exactly like here. Back to DC01. So we have the server manager running. We have the same interface that we would on a server. But you notice that we don't have a lot over here on the left-hand side. We have all servers, but we don't have like ADDS, we don't have DNS. We certainly don't have file and storage services. Okay. That's because this is dynamic and we don't have any servers added. If we go to all servers, right, there's nothing here. Since it's not a server, we don't have obviously the local server option. So we can come in here, we can right click, add servers. Local computer is not domain joined. Interesting. Oh, I know what the problem, or part of our problem is the fact that we're still using I can't type. Oh no. Should be fine, actually, now that I think about it. Oh. Yeah, so DNS server is 172.25.192, which is 172.25.192.2. Okay. We should still be able to. Yeah. Okay. So we can reach it. And we're joined to the domain. I stumbled across that earlier. Full device name. Hmm. Before we do that, let's do a quick reboot. It'll also allow me to demonstrate what I was talking about earlier about the local administrator account and the PC name. I can't type. Grief. Pardon me. Forget the idiot driving. Or forgive the idiot driving, I guess. Good there. So real quick, check on gateway. Yes, close. Stop. Local server. Didn't we just did I rename the wrong machine? Please tell me I didn't rename the wrong machine. I did. Huh? All right, so here we'll go other user. That's why, because we weren't logged in with the domain account. That's why it was having issues. Okay, so right now it says, okay, I'm domain join. I want to sign into Republic. Right? And if we go with just the domain administrator account, it has changed to the local machine. It says, okay, you want to use administrator. I have a local account named administrator, right? So we would have to actually change this to Republic to say, no, we want to log in as the domain or using the domain administrator account. All right. Now you could, that's using the NetBIOS name. We could also use the fully qualified domain name of republic.example.org. Or you could also do and sign in with the domain administrator account that way. However, we have not admin. There we go. We can just log in with our IT admin account. That's taking a minute. this over here. I did rename the wrong one because, yeah. Duh. Name this one to what it should be. That guy. Back over to Gateway. Sure, we're on Gateway. Okay, so our Windows box is now logged in, so we can open the server manager again. Boom, boom, boom. Now, because we logged in with the it.admin, it created the new profile. So this is full screen. Get that going. This over here. Okay, so now when we come into add servers, so we right click, we can add servers this way. We're going to let it catch up here real quick. And then under tasks, no, really? That's filter. Huh. Interesting. Seem to recall, but yeah, okay. Now Active Directory works just fine. We can talk to the machine. So we can type in the name of the server. We can even type in part of the name. So if we want to add all of the domain controllers, of course we only have the one. We can just do, DC, click find now. If we had more than one, they would all come back in a list. And we could select all of them, move them over to the selected, click OK to commit. Okay, so now it's reaching out to DC01. Now we have Active Directory domain services, DNS, all right, file and storage services. We can go to shares. Okay, and it tells us the server, tells us share. So as we add other servers to this from our management machine, we'll be able to see like the shares, and we can go in and we can, adjust the settings and permissions as we need. Come in here, we customize permissions. And this would be the NTFS permissions. These would be the share permissions. So everybody has read to the C. We can fix that, but not a concern right at the moment. So yeah, as things go, this will change based on what we all have here. Performance counters are not started. Okay, so when you first add a machine to server manager, right, it's going to say, hey, I'm online, performance counters are not started. You can just right click on this guy and start performance counters. And there you go. Back over to Gateway. So now we have that all set up. We can actually come in here. We can go to Active Directory domains, users, and computers. No, don't do that. Hello. Stop. And we can actually manage Active Directory here without ever actually touching DC01. So if we come back in here to users and let's see. Okay, so we created, we need to create, well, we don't need to create, but we're going to create. some additional users. So first off, we're going to create a group. Let's do that first. So we're in our groups. We're going to create a new group for the Senate. So we're going to right click, go to new, and group. Put a name in it. So this would be just anybody who's part of the Senate, right? So this is senators, aides, other members of a senator's staff, right? So this is going to be kind of this is a broadly encompassing part of people of the Senate. The group name and the pre-Windows 2000 name, there's no need to worry about the change there. The group scope, right? So domain local means that it's only a group that has access to the local Active Directory domain that it's part of. Global and universal get into when you have other domains and trusts and how they interact. So we can leave global, it's fine. We could set domain local, but global really doesn't hurt us here. The group type. So we got security, we got distribution. Distribution group is just that. It's entirely focused on email and exchange, or whatever email you're using. If you have an email server set up, you can set a distribution group, and if it interacts with Active Directory, you can use it that way. We're not going to have an on-prem exchange server, so we're not going to worry about this. We're going to leave it as security. And kind of depending on where you're at, you may have some distribution groups, but really pretty much everything we're going to set up is going to be global and security. All right, so we have that. Let's go ahead while we're here, right click inside the window, go to new, go to group, and now we're going to create a senators group. We're going to leave it as global and security. And this is just going to be for actual senators, right? Now that we have the group, we can come in here and we can right click. We can go to properties, open up the properties window, and we can go to the members tab, click add, and we can add in the users that we want. Provided that I can spell it. There we go. Okay. And then you can click apply to commit the change, not close the window. Click OK to commit the change and close the window. And then under senators, and before we do that, we're going to create another user who is not really a senator. You know what? Let's just go ahead and create another organizational unit real quick. And who do we want from episode? We have let's use the senator from the Trade Federation in episode 1, right? Or actually, no. Before we do that, this is an OU, so we want to call it. Let's go to trade. Now, Active Directory will let you get a, it's got no problem with putting a space in between like organizational units. It really depends on what the policies are as for the naming conventions that your organization uses. All right. The only part where spaces kind of complicate your life is when you're doing PowerShell. So I need to just pin this to the taskbar. Go. So if we wanted to create, let's take care of housekeeping. So this is a new user or a new profile. Go. All right. So if we wanted to create a new Active Directory user using PowerShell, and we name demo. Actually, no. Let's if we're going to use organizational unit, organi unit. So then we demo and domain. So when we do this, we can also specify the actual path. And when we do this, we have to work our way up using the LDAP conventions until we hit the domain. So if we wanted to create a new organizational unit under Senate, and actually, yeah, we'll do that. And if we want to create it under, say, the Trade Federation, which we don't have created yet, so if we tried to do this, it would blow up. But, and actually, you know what? I hate it when people do that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create this one. And then we're going to create another one with an actual space. So we're going to Trade Federation it, uncheck protect from accidental deletion. So this one's going to have the space. And this is the one that I'm going to demo to show you where you potentially can have problems. So in the string for the OU, where we have to type in the Federation and then we have to go up another step. So the OU is Senate. Then we go up another step, and this is in users. Then we step up again to the public OU. Now we're at the domain level, right? So Trade Federation has put us here. Senate has put us here. Users, Republic. Now we're at the domain level. So this is where we change the pre to DC equals public. DC equals example. And DC equals work. So we have the whole string here, and it's fine. Now, you may run into the issue where you go to run this and it blows up, and it tells you like you can't find it or something like that. Well, and you fight with it for a while and you're like, well, I've typed everything right and everything else. Well, the problem comes in because there's a space here, and then PowerShell narfs because it says OU equals trade, and then it's like, I don't know what to do with the space. So the way you get around that is because you already have the quotation marks for the string is you have to put the literal in here, which is the single quotation mark, and then you should be fine. So I tend to avoid spaces because earlier editions of PowerShell, and it's just one of those things that can creep up and bite you, and you can wind up spending way more time than you really want to on trying to figure out what happened with it. And it winds up being a simple fix, which you can just avoid by not using space. So we can come in here and we can go underscore, and now we have the whole deal. We're fine. Should load Active Directory on its own. Does not look like it's going to, though. So we would have to import the Active Directory module. More than likely, yeah. The term new organization. Okay, so here we do import module directory. And there we go there. Now we can go through and we can type thing and then, oh, it's new AD organizational unit. So there's my other problem. This is also the problem of when you just kind of wing your curriculum. Parameter cannot be found that matches domain. 80 organizational unit. Maybe we don't need domain there. No. Okay, we don't. Running way too much of another command that required the domain. Oh, joining computer. So if when we run add computer from PowerShell, right, and we say, like, and we want to rename the machine and demo comp, right? Here we have to tell it the domain. Unfortunately, my brain was still stuck on the other, so my bad. So now if we look at trade underscore federation and refresh, we have the demo org unit. And then we can create the other one with the space. Never did actually enter the command, so we'll just and again, there you go. And yeah, that's why I should really write down the things first. I told you my recall was horrible. Just saying, you were warned. Okay, and the space doesn't trip us up here. So again, it really depends on the naming conventions that the organization wants to use. If you're in charge of that, up to you whether or not you want to use spaces or underscores or dashes or camel case, right? You could also just camel case it. You can come in here, go new organizational unit. You can go trade federation, right? You could do that. It's maybe a little difficult, a little harder on the eyes this way. So, there's no wrong way, is what I'm saying. You can do it the other ways. I'm just letting you know that PowerShell could get flaky if you have spaces. If only because of the fact that it hits the space, and depending on, like, if it was a literal, I think I could actually blow it up. Maybe I should try that. Unit name. I am just a little too quick on the next key when I have the shift key down. Math. So OU equals equal minute users U equals underscore republic, because I just like to have it up at the top. So we're good there. Oh, I wanted to actual literal string it, not public. Hello. Sample. Close. The organizational unit. Organ. I can't spell. And Yeah, literal didn't blow up either. And you're probably thinking, yeah, okay, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. Proteus, you're just an idiot, which I am. But it's also we're in a later, the current version of PowerShell is much smarter than earlier editions, like PowerShell 3. PowerShell 7 is much smarter than PowerShell 3 or 4. So maybe we don't need to have the whole discussion on whether or not you have a space in it. What do you think? Stop. Okay, so I'm going to keep the underscore in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and go in here and I'm going to get rid of these. It's fine. Okay, so Trade Federation. So now we need a new user. Oops, let's get rid of the demo folder here as well, because we don't need that. And this would be, because we did not, I did not tell it not, or to, I did not tell it, I did not untick the, so, yeah, well, let's just show. Okay, so when we go here, there is a switch where we can go protect from accidental deletion, and we can say false. Right. Now this obviously isn't going to work because of the fact that we don't have that OU anymore. So let's go ahead and put that there. Is it protected? There we go. It's protected from accidental deletion. So we come in here, refresh. We have demo. We have demo 1. Go. We look at the properties. We go to manage. So we look at the tabs, but here's the problem. How do we tell it? How do we uncheck protected from accidental deletion so we can actually get rid of this? Because when we go to delete it, right, and it's kind of a misleading error, right? So it says, are you sure you want to delete? Yes. Okay. You do not have sufficient privileges to delete, or this object is protected from accidental deletion. Okay, so it's not misleading. I just don't read the thing. So, okay. Well, how do I uncheck that so that I can delete this? And the answer to that question is if we go to view, right, and we come here and we click on advanced features so that there's a check next to this to turn this on, right? Now we get a whole bunch of extra OU containers in our AD users and computers that we didn't have before. So if we turn it back off, right, we didn't have like lost and found. We didn't have any of the other ones that came up that weren't here. So like lost and found, we didn't have it. Program data, I don't think was in there. Okay, so now advanced features is giving us all these new containers, but it's also opened up or exposed a lot more tabs. So if we come in Trade Federation, now we can right click, go to properties, and we actually have some more tabs here. Whereas before we had general, managed by, and com, we have object, security, attribute editor, right? And if we look at the object, oh, look, there it is. So we uncheck this guy, right? Now we can come in here and delete. And if we checked the one that we created where we actually did tell PowerShell not to do that, right? It's already, there you go. We're all set. We can delete this as well. Fantastic. Awesome. Okay, let's clean up our mess a little bit here. Keep our workspace kind of organized. All right, so we're going to add a new senator. So we have more than just the one, right? So we'll go new user. Now we can do this from PowerShell as well, obviously, right? And we can do, should be new AD user, I think. Before I do that, let's confirm that. So if we go get help new ADU, and then we wildcard the end of it so that we just say as long as it starts with new -ADU, we want to know about it. All right, we want you to get in the list of the commands that you return. And yeah, new AD user. Okay, and this is all the extra syntax stuff that we're probably not going to need, but you can see the additional switches here, right? So we've got a name switch, which takes a string. We have a what if. And if you use the what if, it is just that. It goes and says, okay, if I tried to make the change, will it, let's try to make the change, but not actually commit it. So let's see if what happens if we push the button, but don't actually mean to push the button. Right? We make the change, but don't commit it, really, is more of what we're looking for here. We can set in account expiration date. We can set the password. We could do all of these fantabulous things. Account password, though, is a secure string. So it does require a little bit of kind of finagling. Change password at login. That's a Boolean. So that would be either, $true, $false. We can add all of these things in. So we could, we can do new AD user, name, demo. We could set the password. But we're not going to just yet. Yeah. Let's see. What else do we want to add? We can add. We don't really want. We can do department. So department. What else do we want? Not so much. Yeah, we can do display name too. So we could, display name. User or user, comma demo. However you really want to do that. But name is going to be the actual account name, so it's going to be the user login name and the pre-Windows 2000 login name. And we can actually say given name is demo. I just entirely too quick on this name user. So we can fill in, the first name field, the last name field. We could fill in full. Well, we could do this. And we could actually just combo out the two if we sign variables and whatnot. But that's really more of a PowerShell discussion than it is anything else. I just kind of want to show that it's possible. Let's clean that up. All right, so we need our Trade Federation Senator from episode 1. Not change password. So if we check out who he is, right? This guy. So, when they're all in the actual Senate and, Padme showed up and she's floating around and does her whole, I didn't come here so you can discuss it in a committee. So that's him. There you go. Now we have him. Now we can go back into our groups. If we wanted to go to just senators, go into properties, go into members. Now, say we want to add Palpatine, whom we all know and love, right? And then good old Lot. Put his username in as well. As soon as I stop fat fingering things, we'll be fine. Check the names. Okay, everybody checks out. Great. All right, there you go. So we can add multiple users in. We can also click remove them out. We're not going to do that. Now we can also add the user. So we can click on the user, and then we go to member of tab, right? And then we can just add them into the group here as well. So multiple ways to accomplish that, obviously. So we've got him. We need the chancellor. So let's go new. User, that is Finis. Chancellor Valerum. Valerum. Okay, there you go. Finis. Valerum. Rum, not rim. Rum. Oh, Finis. Okay. So we'll just go ahead and kind of flesh the rest of this out here. So under Jedi, we have Yoda. We can't forget. All right, so under Jedi, so you have the Jedi Council. Let's go ahead and make organizational units for those. So there's the Jedi Council, right? We have Jedi Knights. And really, I think we just only have Padawans left, right? Now, we also need, well, we don't need, but we're going to break out the computers as well, because we may run into situations where we want computers, different computers to have different access, or to have, say, like a default desktop. So, you know, we want the Senate, maybe the Chancellor, we want to have default icons on his desktop, whereas a senator doesn't necessarily have all of those, right? So go in here, add a new organizational unit. Chancellor's office. Naboo. We also have the Trade Federation. So now we have, so you're probably looking at this and you're going, okay, look, genius, you're just doubling this up. Why can't we just do, like, you know, Naboo and then users and computers? And you can. But it really comes in more into when you start applying group policies and how you want those to kind of cascade. And users, you know, if your user's OU starts with users, the U obviously comes later in the alphabet than C. So you may have to do some kind of weird, like, loop back with group policies so that cycles back through, because as it processes the deal. So depending on how you name them and how you get things kind of structured, as it goes through and starts applying group policies, it may apply, say, a computer policy, but then override it with a user policy or vice versa, depending on where they're at and kind of the hierarchy and whether or not it even goes through and sees it all the way through because it's already past it and it's like, well, I'm not going back. It's too late. No backseas. So this is usually, I found this to be easier to manage because now if I want to do something specifically for computers, I can just do it there. I don't have the weird kind of, because again, if you have say Naboo and Trade Federation, then you have computers underneath both of them, and you want to apply something to every computer, where you place the group policy now kind of gets convoluted and questionable. And there are kind of ways to where you could put it, say, higher up. Like, you could hang it straight up off of the domain OU. And then you can introduce logic, which we'll get to when we talk about group policies, as to like, okay, well, if they're part of this OU, if it's a member of this, or if it's in this organizational unit, then go ahead and apply it. If it's a member of said group, then go ahead and apply that. Problem is now when you're logging in, you've got this whole cascade of decisions that have to be made and checks, which slow that process down. And if you slow that process down, your users are going to let you know about it. So you want to make it essentially as streamlined as possible. So yes, you want some group policies in there to do some of the management, but you don't want it to blow up and have tons of group policies that it has to go through. Because again, you're going to slow down your login process and your users are going to let you know. They're not going to be happy if they have to, when they go to start login and they can go, get coffee, make a bagel, walk around the building a couple times, come back, and it's still trying to log in. They're not going to like you for that. Don't do that. Council. And yes, I can create all of this with PowerShell. And if you know how to do that right now, go right ahead. Because this does get tedious, which is also why we do things like script it. I'm just not right now. Because if you're not familiar with it, or if this is still new to you, then the repetition just reinforces that knowledge in your mind. So you at least have it floating around, even if you don't immediately recall all of it. So we've got that. Senate. So we look here, Jedi Council, Jedi Knights. So Jedi Knights, okay. Senate, Chancellor's Office, Naboo, Federation, Chancellor's Office, Naboo, Federation. I don't see where we need to have all of these broken out in the groups. I am going to add 2 more groups to the Senate. Actually, I'm going to add 3 of them. We have Chancellor's Office. Another group, and this is going to be who? Federation. So if we refresh this, it'll work. Then if we come in to Jedi, go to new group, Jedi.council. Again, the naming convention that you use for your groups is entirely, first off, going to be based on the convention that your organization uses. Using, starting them all with like, Jedi or Senate and then dot whatever else helps me organize it. So if they were all in the same, if they were just in a groups folder and we just threw it all in groups OU, At least then I know, okay, this is a Jedi one, this is a Senate one. I can look at that and parse it out. I'm not so reliant on the organizational unit at that point because the name is fairly descriptive, right? So at least then, like if we come in under users and we can't forget good old Qui-Gon, right? Which is for some reason not in my notes. All right, well, uh, there we go. On Jin, Jin. I mean, we can't forget Liam Neeson here, right? Oops. Go. Okay. So if I want to add him to like groups, you know, member, now I'm like, well, he's a Jedi, so what are my options? So now say, oh, okay, well, he's Jedi Knights. There you go. Easy peasy. And yeah, the search still works. So you could, depending on how you did the whole naming thing, it just, again, depending on the conventions, for my brain, this organizational structure works, right? For the group names. Because, the login names are first dot last name. So the groups we can do the same thing with, and then we can actually group them into like Jedi, Senate, IT. So if we come in here, we add a new group for IT and we say, IT.admins, spell it right. And then let's see, another role would be what? IT help desk, maybe? Every every place, as far as I know, has their own kind of naming conventions. This just allows you to kind of get granular but generic because you have the first part, the next part, and if you need a third part, you can start breaking it into those multiple pieces with dots in between, as opposed to trying to do like weird camel case things and everything else. And you've got a spacer in there, so when you come in here and look pretty quick, it's you're not trying to read camel case and underscores necessarily. Like if I had an underscore here and then an underscore here, then you're like, okay, Senate underscore trade underscore federal what? So yeah, it all works in my brain. It, it may or may not make sense to you. Use whatever makes sense to you in your lab, in the environment, the organization that you work in when you're actually at work. Follow those conventions. Whoever has established those policies, make sure that you follow those if they have them. Okay. Computers. Ah, yes. Here's the other thing. So when we joined our IT admin computer, it went to the computer's container by default. So we want to get it out of there, put it in actual computers. Windows is going to complain about moving out Active Directory objects. That's fine. And there you go. So now we don't have anything in computers. We have it where it's supposed to be, which is in the proper OU. Let's see. And we have our IT admin user. We don't want generic. So if we go just for giggles, new user, first name's IT, last name is going to be Proteus because this is my account. Okay, Proteus. Go. All right. Fantastic. All right. So now that we have groups, we have users, and we're doing all of this without actually being on the domain controller. We're using Active Directory users and computers, remote server administration tool from our Windows election, from our IT admin workstation. So if we do an errant click, somewhere in the file system, say we have File Explorer open for some reason, which you're probably going to on your workstation, right? And if you were on the server and you were doing something, which we're going to do here in just a second, so, and then you come in somewhere and create a new folder or delete a folder, which is even worse. And then you realize, I just deleted this. I just deleted, whatever important folder off of the server. By using the remote server admin tools, you are not connected directly into the server. So the likelihood of you errantly deleting a folder, thinking that you're on your workstation to go clean something up real quick, is extremely unlikely because you're not even on it. And again, if you can do it without connecting directly to the server, then I highly recommend that you get in the habit of doing that. Just so that you avoid that. You're not even in the neighborhood of potential for that, right? Plus, say again that you're doing something and somebody goes and establishes a remote connection to it. Now they disconnect you. And you get into that initial kind of fight back and forth because you're like, hey, I just got disconnected. So you log back in. Well, now the other person's like, hey, I just got disconnected. So then they log back in. And then you immediately get disconnected again. And you're like, okay, are we having some kind of bad actor event? Is somebody actually actively running in? Did it, so now all of a sudden you're kind of like, hey, is anybody doing the thing? And then you start to kind of maybe borderline start panic mode because you're like, oh my God, we've got an active breach going on. Because there are times where there are things that it's easier to do on the server than not, right? Like what we're going to do now, because we have users, we have groups. These are great. We have users in groups, but we're not doing anything with it, right? We have Jedi Knights, we have Jedi Council. Actually, I need to add users, Jedi. Yoda needs to be moved into the council. We need to go in and we need to add Yoda as a member of the council group. And I'm kind of thinking Jedi council members are also Jedi Knights, so they should be a member of the Jedi Knights group as well. Not sure that makes a whole lot of sense, but it does to me. All right. Apparently I've typed this wrong. Surprise. Or is it just, it may be upset about the fact that I'm trying to add multiple groups. Because there are areas. An object named Jedi Knights cannot be found. Huh? Let's just get that together. Jedi. Oh, because I misspelled Jedi Knights. Oh, flipperty gibbet. fine. Let's fix that. And make sure that I click on groups, not the thing. There we go. Okay, can have to that. Let's change the pre-2000 name as well. There we go. Just for giggles. Let's make sure that we still... Yep, okay. So it's updated. We could have just finished the update with Yoda as well. But there are certain object when you go to like certain areas in Active Directory where you can only enter in one at a time. You can't use like multiple, and it is mildly annoying when you run into those. But thankfully, they're few and far between. Jedi Council tonight. There we go. All right. So we've got that. We might as well go ahead and add in, good old Obi-Wan, right? I thought there was a hyphen in his name, and there is. Obi-Wan, you're, Kenobi. Ooh. Not how you type that password. And that's not how you type it at all. Okay. There we go. Ta-da! And he of Jedi Padawans. Ta-da! Okay. So Qui-Gon, Yoda, we have a user for every user group. And depending on how we wanted to break, we could break out the IT too, but we're just not going to go that far down the rabbit hole. All right. So we have groups. We have people who are groups or in groups. We have members of said groups, right? Although I don't think that we added... no, we did not. Okay, so chance name and Senate. I'm kind of thinking... Well, yeah. So the chancellor would be a senator. That's basically... Yeah, okay, so we can leave that there. Tells me we're going to need another group. Dun, dun. Rose can't. I think I totally messed that up. I did. Coruscant. Coruscant. Yep. All right, cool. All right. Global security is fine. There you go. Because pretty sure he's from Coruscant. And we're not going to go down the rabbit hole and check. We're just gonna go with it right now. All right. So now that's totally not even close to what I was trying to spell. Go. So he's a member of the Senate group, Coruscant, the Chancellor's office. Okay. All of that is fantastic. Hello. Oh, Microsoft, you've got to stop with this. Seriously. Go away. I don't want it. So utterly annoying. I'm sure there's a way to turn that off. All right, so now we are on the domain controller, and to kind of to help minimize the number of virtual machines that we've got going on, I'm going to use it also as the file server. In production, I don't recommend that you do this, especially if you're in a virtualized environment and you can get away with it. Have your file server just be a file server, right? Not and have the domain controller. So there should only be three things that the domain controller is really doing. It should be Active Directory Domain Services, DHCP, and DNS. And that's it. Unless you have some, say, third-party applications or some like LDAP third-party authenticator type deals that need to run on there as well. But other than that, keep it clean, keep it simple, and just limit it to those three, right? Active Directory Domain Services, DHCP, and DNS. The reason being is the less things you have running on it, the less potential things that can cause it to catastrophically fail, right? So if you're running some app that really shouldn't be there and then it blows up and then say it corrupts the C partition, right? Or somehow blows up some DLL in Windows or something so Windows can't boot. Well, now all of a sudden you've just blown your domain controller up and you're going to have to go through and deal with the recovery of that or the restoration of said deal. And then you're going to have to try and figure out what happened to it. And there's just save yourself the headache, right? Just let the domain controller do Active Directory Domain Services, DNS, and DHCP. And it doesn't have to do DHCP necessarily. Depending on the size of your organization, how it's structured, you may have separate DHCP servers. I find this to be fairly rare, but it could happen. Again, depending on the size of the organization, how it's all structured. And I don't know. So anyway, I went ahead and created another. So I went into Hyper-V Manager. I went into new hard disk, and then I created virtual hard drive DCO1 storage, DCO1.storage, right? And of course, I've attached it to this virtual machine. So if it looks as a controller, you see there's a hard drive, Republic -DCO1.storage. Right? And so then I went ahead and did all that. Now I've created a public and private shares main folder, and I've also apparently created some other folders underneath there. Okay, so we have the Jedi, we have the Senate. So public shares obviously would be ones that multiple users can access. Not everyone, obviously. We don't want, say, the Senate to be able to access the Jedi stuff. And the Jedi, depending on how you see their interaction with it, whether or not they're actually authorized to do that. I'm going to say they're not, right? So we'll start here, and then we're going to share out the public shares. So we'll right click on the folder name, the properties. I'm going to go to sharing. I'm going to click the share. So if you click share, right, it says, hey, choose the people, and you get this whole kind of window thing going on where it's like, okay, well, I want like, this person to have read write. I'm going to add this other person. And then you click share. Actually, you know what? Let's just go ahead and do it. We can blow the share up. It's fine. If we need to. Okay, so the administrators group is the owner. IT admin has read write. Yeah, we'll leave read write for the moment. Well, yeah, because there's only. So this is Jedi. What am I doing typing? So we go Jedi, add. Okay, so now we have a, which makes sense because we didn't actually add a generic Jedi group, right? So let's do that. Let's go back over Jedi, new group. Now, the Jedi Council, the Jedi Knights, and the Padawans are all members of the Jedi. So we run into the question of, do we want to have yet another group? So like Yoda, he's already a member of the Jedi Council, the Jedi Knights. You kind of have to do that regardless, but do we want to have like, the Jedi Council, the Jedi Knights set up this way, or do we want to maybe nest groups? Right? So if we come in here and we say, okay, well, all of these are Jedi. So if we come in to the Jedi group, say, okay, members, and now we're going to add in, say, the Jedi Council, right? Knights, Jedi. I don't want. Spell it. There you go. So now when we say, okay, the Jedi, we automatically give all of these groups permissions without having to get super granular. And because we want all of the Jedi to get to the public shares, right? Okay, do you want to change these settings? The folder shown below were previously shared. Okay, so I've already got some. Let's cancel that. Let's come back over here real quick. So apparently I decided to create some shares. Oh no. Yeah, I did. Thing. Let's dig into what I did here. I think I shared the two individually. No. Okay. Oh, that's not it. Properties. Bad sharing. Huh. Did I misread it? All right. Anyway, so we go to sharing. Come in here, we go to share. We say, okay, we got the Jedi. We do the whole thing. And now we can say share. Folder shown below were previously shared. You can replace their current settings with the same setting you just applied to the folder you shared. Okay, I don't want to share out Jedi and Senate. I want the one share folder and then to be able to navigate into the other subfolders as needed. Right? Now we can do it this way. We can share them out individually. And now we have two shares instead of the one, which is more management overhead. Again, depending on the policies and the situation for the share, you may or may not do it that way. We're not going to change the settings. Okay, so now we've got public shares, which is public DCO1, and there's the UNC path for the shares that we need. Okay, so now you can do it this way, and you have the whole deal. Or we can go into advanced sharing, and let's do that with private shares real quick. Come over here, properties, come into sharing. Now we use advanced sharing, right? Now we can say check the folder. It gives us what it thinks a suggestion for the share name, right? It says, okay, well, the folder name is private shares. We'll just make the share name the same, just fine. And you can come in permissions. And this is really what we did with the other one, with the public shares, right? So we can come in here and we can say Senate and IT admin. Now it's like, well, okay, which Senate did you mean? We meant the generic Senate. And then we meant just generic IT admin. No, we want the IT admins group, actually. So then the IT admins group, and here's really the change. So where we saw read and write, right? That's effectively change permissions. We can say full control, and full control and change are really kind of the same, but not obviously the same because they're two different things. So we can, we can do this, say everybody can read. Okay, that's fine. And when we come back over here and we look, and if we go into the advanced sharing, right, we look at the permissions. See, we've got full control. So the read write there, the previous way is just ticks full control. We don't have Jedi in here though, which is kind of weird. So we told it to put them in there. So we're going to do that. I'm going to let them have change rights. We got Republic administrators. So we have the domain administrators group that has full control. Let's pull that out. Put IT admins in, and we're just gonna give it change. We're not going to give everyone full control. That we'll give them read for now, and there's a whole other discussion when it comes to the everyone group. You don't have to pull it out now, but in the past, and like server 2000, 2003, the everyone group actually it would allow you to log in as like a guest, which could be bad. So you didn't really want the everyone group. So you wanted to pull it out. Now that Microsoft has changed that, so you don't have to pull it out. But again, there may be a policy in your organization that says, hey, we don't use the everyone group. A more secure way to do this, right, would be to come into permissions and say, okay, we can use the authenticated users group. Say give them read permissions, right? Come in here and remove everyone. So now you at least need to be authenticated before you can even reach this over the network. Whereas the everyone group, you could log in as guests. You didn't have to actually be authenticated from a domain controller. You could log in and still reach it. You'd probably be stopped by NTFS permissions. But so this again really kind of comes down to policy. I prefer to use authenticated users at the very least, so that if it's a share that kind of everybody needs to be able to get to, I'll put authenticated users in there, and maybe even domain computers, just so it's more secure that way as opposed to the everyone group. So we do that. There you go. So now we have public shares. So here's the thing, right? We'll use the Windows 11 machine. So now we can come to our Windows machine and we can use the universal, the UNC path. So we can say Republic DC01. And you can already see that we can see the shares, right? So now we know that there's a Jedi and a Senate folder. Probably not what we want there, and that we can get to both of these. this is definitely not the behavior. Well, it is the behavior we want for the IT admin. So we should really log in as a user. And see what they can get. We can just use the same. You can spin up another VM to do that. But depending on the resources of your actual physical computer, that may not be an option. So just use, you can also obviously use the same one like I'm going to. Okay, other user. Let's see here. So if we log in as Yoda, right? And we have to go through the whole rigmarole of Windows saying, hey, we got to create a new profile for you because we don't know who you are. So when you're dealing with shares, you have share permissions and then you have NTFS permissions. Right? So if we look, we have the sharing tab, and these would be our share permissions. Right? So we can come in here and we can look, say, okay, authenticated users have read rights, IT admins have change. You can do full control here. Again, full control and change are really close, but not necessarily the same. But so like here where we have Jedi for the share permissions, right? And then if we go to the security tab, this is the NTFS level permissions, right? So if we go to advanced, now, well, let me close this and get this to where I have them side by side. So we can come in here and you can edit, and you see how, you know, we've got full control, modify, read, write, list for contents. We can select the user. This looks a lot like the shares permissions. And this is one way to go ahead and kind of quickly add users and permissions. But there's a bit missing here. So if we go into advanced, right, you see this whole column here applies to, right, this folder, subfolders, and files. So say we want Jedi to be able to get to a folder, but we don't necessarily want just any Jedi to get farther down into a folder, right? This is where we can come in and we can edit. We say, okay, well, yeah, you can do this folder only. You can do this folder and subfolders, but you can't mess with the files. And you have a few more permissions here than you do in the other window. So I usually come into the advanced settings because I have those. And like inheritance, you can enable inheritance, disable inheritance. You also have the share permission, so we can change both here. But until you're comfortable like remembering, okay, permissions is NTFS and share is the share permissions, and those are two separate kind of deals, because share permissions apply when you're accessing the resource over the network, right? NTFS primarily is when you're accessing it local. So like when we're on the server and we go in here and it says, oh, okay, well, yeah, you can, it checks NTFS permissions, but not the share permissions, because it doesn't have to, because this is a local machine. It's not accessed over the network. And that's where your share permissions come in. So over here where Yoda is logged in, we can come in here and we can say public DC01, and we can see the shares. All right, so we can say, okay, here we go. And now we know that there's Jedi in Senate. Now as Yoda, I go into Senate, I can get into Senate. We may not want that, right? I get in Jedi, which we do want, but we don't necessarily want Jedi to get into Senate. So we need to come back over here. We need to look at our Senate NTFS permissions. So the share, right? So we can get the public shares because we're accessing it over the network. And when you're accessing a share, Microsoft uses the combination of the share permissions and the NTFS permissions and applies the most restrictive combination of those. So if you have, say, write permission, we'll just open up the one where we can see both of them. Move this over. So when we come in here and we look at the share permissions, so you can see where the Jedi have changed permissions to the Senate, right? And then we come here and they have full control. So if we change, or actually if we just get rid of the Jedi altogether from the Senate, right? Say nope. Okay, we can't because it's inheriting. Okay. The other thing is if we look at the inheritance shares by default, so we don't want it to inherit all of the NTFS permissions from the parent folder. All right, we don't want that. So we're going to come in here. We're going to disable inheritance. Now, when it asks what you want to do with them, you can remove everything, or you can convert them. Obviously, if you remove all of the inherit permissions, this entire thing goes blank, and you have to recreate it from scratch. I would not recommend you do that. I would recommend that you convert them. And now you see that we're inheriting from nothing. So now we can come in here and we can say, okay, you guys can't, Jedi can't see what's in the Senate folder. Nope. Easy peasy, right? However, we also don't have any permissions for the Senate anywhere in this share, which is weird. But we can fix that here in a minute. But we're going to leave the Jedi there for the moment. And we're going to add, so we're going to add and then select a principal. And you can use users, groups, computers, pretty much any Active Directory object. Right now, obviously, we're on users, group, or built-in security principles. So we say, hey, the Senate can get to the Senate folder. Anybody in the Senate group, right? We go okay. Now it's like, okay, we have to tell it which one, which is fine. And then we say, okay, you can read next, you can read and execute, but you can't modify. So you can see what's in there, but you cannot change it. And this is just the general Senate group. We may have some other, well, it depends on where you want to make the changes. Really. So we're fine now. We just want to be able to read it. So we'll go okay. Now we have the Senate. And this is, so they can read everything. All right. If it's in that folder, if it's in a subfolder within the Senate folder, if it's a file, they can open it. They can execute it. So if there's an application or something in there, they can run all of those, which is fine. Do that. Now we come over to the sharing because we couldn't change it. Oh, that's why. Okay. I don't want to change it because I don't want to share the folder. So we have the NTFS permissions. So now Jedi should not be able to get to this at all. But we still can, or no, actually we can't. But if you need to update permissions, like if you grant someone access, they're going to have to log out and log back in or reboot. Usually you just have them reboot and they're fine. But now, okay, now we can't get to it. Location, make sure, Basically, it's like, hey, look, you can see it, but you can't actually get into it. Which we're good with, for the most part. But what if we just don't even want it to be available? Right? Like, we don't want them to see it at all. Well, we can come in here into Server Manager under Shares, Properties, and Settings. Right. And now we have enable access-based enumeration. Access-based enumeration displays only files and folders that a user has permissions to access. If the user does not have read or equivalent permissions to a folder, window hides the folder from the user's view. You can also cache. We can encrypt the data access. So we've already got access-based enumeration enabled here. We can still see it because of the fact that, actually, let's go there. And I'm just going to use the properties from the server manager because it's there. Go to customize. We look at the share because everyone has full control, which is frightening. Oh, I changed it for the private shares, not the public. All right, so let's get rid of that. Let's add this. So because everyone had full control, then obviously that's the read equivalent for every user, right? Authenticated users should be able to read. Okay, that's fine. Administrators. Far down the right. So we come back. Public shares, Jedi. We need to add the Senate into public shares as well. Senate group. All right. By that. Click OK. Now, language security, Senate, IT admin. Okay, Jedi aren't here, so we should. This should go away. Options, fresh, and there you go. Because we don't have read permissions to it anymore at the NTFS level, we don't even see it. Which is what we want, right? Because Yoda doesn't necessarily need to know that there's additional shares in here for the Senate. He just needs to know that there's whatever folders he is supposed to be looking at. He doesn't necessarily need to know about the other ones that are there. And in production environments, depending on how this is set up, it should be set up this way, right? But it may, for whatever reason, not be. So then people can see the shares, but they still can't access them. So if a user were to call you, like say a manager, right, and they're like, "Oh my God, Senate users or Jedi can see that there's a Senate folder in the public shares." Oh my God, they're just going to wreak havoc. They're going to go in there and they can see all the stuff that we're doing and everything else. Like, calm down. And then you actually, as a Jedi user, go in, log into something, see if you can access it. Actually test that. And you can also, if like somebody thinks that, say Mace Windu, right, or Qui-Gon has access to a folder because he can see it in the list of shares. Well, you can log in or go to that workstation with whoever it is that's saying, "Oh my God, they can see it. This," and prove to them that they don't have access to it. But they shouldn't see it to start with. So you do want to go in there and make sure that access-based enumeration is actually set. So that not everybody knows what all's in there. Only the people, or that users only see what it is that they actually have access to. They can't see that all this other stuff is in there because they might be tempted to try and figure out how to get to it. Like, well, maybe I can see the TPS reports folder. Or I can get in and look at the TPS reports. Maybe. So there's that. Now, if we log in as, so that's Yoda, that's Jedi. So if we log in as senator. And because I can remember how to spell his name, although I can't remember how to. It's not it either. There we go. And then we got to go through the whole deal. But the idea being is that he should not, once we log in as this senator, he should see that there's a Jedi folder because he has read access to it. So we're going to go ahead and clean that up too when we do this real quick. Because obviously we don't want that, right? We don't want that at all. So we have the Jedi, we have IT admin system, we're inheriting, and that's why we have the Senate. So we're going to disable inheritance, right? We're going to convert the inherited permissions to explicit permissions so that we have something there. Come in. We're going to we're going to leave it there for now. Because again, we want to test that it's doing things the way that we want them to. I think I just need to move that. Let's move that over here. It's easier to see, right? So come in. Public shares. Okay. Hey, we can see Jedi. We can see it. And now, so here, right, as a senator, and you're like, hey, we can see the Jedi stuff, right? The Jedi have a folder here. Oh, I can get to it. Oh, they might start digging around in here. And this is obviously not good security for what we want. So if we come in and remove it, say apply. All right. And now he's like, oh, hey, Jedi. Oh, wait. And he can't get to it. So if somebody were, if they're like, oh, Lot Dodd can see that the Jedi folder is in the public shares. And you're like, yeah, but he can't get to it, right? He can't do anything with it because he's not authorized to do it. Doesn't mean that they might not try and find ways around it, but he just can't go clicking on it and do the thing, right? But now since he doesn't have it at all, we have access-based enumeration open or enabled. When we refresh, and it's gone. Now, Senate users don't see that there's a Jedi folder. Jedi don't see that there's a Senate folder in the same public shares, right? So as far as they're concerned, there's only the one deal. Now, they could probably reason it out, but when it comes to just looking at what the computer's going to show you, that's all they get. So we're good there. Okay. Now, under Senate, let's create a couple of other folders. So we need, actually, let's create 3. So we got the Explorer's Office. Okay. Then we'll create another folder, and that'll be for Naboo. And I'm going to create this one with PowerShell. Because depending on what you're doing, if you're obviously creating folders in mass, PowerShell is going to be much faster. But there are also times where you don't want to necessarily click back and forth. So if you're doing something in PowerShell, and we'll see this later in a distributed file system, where we need to create a folder, we need to run a command, right? Or we need to create a folder because we're going to do something, we're going to store it in that particular deal because it's a one-off type thing. Clicking back and forth, creating it, and then coming back in PowerShell can be annoying. So if we want to create a new directory, we can do new item, right? We can give it a name. And this is going to be for the Trade Federation. We have to give it a path. And I'm typing backwards. Okay, so it's the D drive, and the D public shares Senate. So we have to obviously type that whole thing in there. You can copy and paste it as well. Because if your typing skills are as horrible as mine. Okay, so we have the name, we have the path. We also need the type. That is obviously directory. Enter, and there you go. So mode, directory, let's read write time, or last write time. Yes, okay, trade federation. And we come back over here and we have a trade federation. Again, depending on what you're doing, because like click new folder, type the name. If you're creating multiple ones, it might just be easier to go ahead, because now I have this here. I can, if I'm going to create other stuff, I can just that is how we spell it, right? Yeah. Told you guys, my recall is horrible. CURO scan. Okay, so yeah, so now we've got it. Dump another one off. If I need to create. So there are times where it just may be faster to do it this way, or you just may prefer the typing. You may have it already somewhere, and you just copy and paste it and dumping it in. So whichever you prefer, or whatever works at the moment. Okay, so now we have all of these. I personally prefer the tile view most of the time, like especially when it's just a bunch of folders. I prefer tile. So if you come up the view, you change it to tiles, you can change it to content, details, and details, of course, is useful, especially if you're looking for the last time that it was modified. You can use medium icons, large icons. If you're familiar enough with Windows, you know how this works. You got your list. I just prefer tiles. All right, so now we have this. We have the Senate. Let's go back. Let's look at our permissions for this. So come back over to NTFS. And the nice thing about having just the one share is we're not having to juggle both, right? We're not have to constantly going, okay, we need to make sure the share permissions are fine. We also need to make sure that the NTFS permissions are fine. We just want everybody to be able to get here. So we have the root folder or the parent folder shared, right? It gives us just the one share. And now we can go ahead and type in or manage the individual permissions on the folders themselves, right? So we know that Senate has read and execute, so people can get in there. If we look at the advanced, we know that they can get into, this folder, subfolders, and files. It's fine. Now we get into the Chancellor's office. Oops. Need to fix. There we go. Okay. All right. So if we come into the Chancellor's office, we can go in properties, move this over, go into advanced, and look. Senate users, anyone in the Senate group can now see these folders. So if we come over here, we'll go into Senate. Now we can see all of them. So we know they're there. Chancellor's office, Cursant. But this is just the user or the senator for the Trade Federation. He doesn't need to know about all these others, right? And he should definitely not be able to just jump into the Chancellor's office. So let's take care of that. First off, our first problem is that they're inherited. So disable inheritance. convert the inherited permissions to explicit, collect Senate, because we don't want just anybody in the Senate to get there. So we're going to not edit. We're going to remove them. We're going to add, and then select principal. And so here we want the group for the Chancellor's office, because those are the members that should see it, right? We also want them to be able to modify, and we want them to have control of anything underneath, right? So the Chancellor can go through here. We want him to be able to go through and be able to create folders as he sees fit, because, you know, the assistant or the other members of his office, you know, these are spots where he can go through and he say, okay, yeah, I can create all of these things for these people. You know, I can create different folders, I can create files, do all the things I need to do there, treat it just basically like local drive kind of deal. We don't necessarily need to give them full control. So under applies, that's where we're going to leave, you know, this folder, subfolders, and files. So again, anybody that's members of the Chancellor's Office group can come in here and make a folder. They can add a file. And let's say that we don't want files in here, right? So just for giggles, let's say we come in here and we add a new folder. Oops, he doesn't have permission to do that. Why? Because I'm pretty sure that was just read, right? All right. Let's, well, no, he doesn't, because this is lot. This is not, yeah, he doesn't have it because it's the wrong user. He's not part of the group anyway. So now, so we'll fix that in just a second. Maybe we haven't applied it, that's why. Now we come back in here. There we go. Now the Trade Federation guy can't see that there's a thing in there. So let me get into the right folder real quick. Well, actually what we need to do is we need to go in and remove the Senate from all of these, right? We don't want just any of the Senate. So we need to update this. So we're going to have to go in each one. We're going to have to disable inheritance. Remove that. And we are in the Coruscant one. So this would be security principal. And this is going to be Senate. And I misspelled it because, you know, I can't type. There we go. That's why, because the group name is all wrong. Because, you know, why wouldn't it? So, public groups, Senate. Just going to copy and paste that in there to speed up the process. Cancel this real quick. Go back in. Senate. Grow. There we go. And then, yeah, we want the senator and whoever is part of the Senate, of the office of the senator of Coruscant, right? To do the same thing. So we want them to be able to create, you know, this folder, subfolders. Actually, I want to keep this clean. So I want only folders to be created. So let's real quick skip all of this and let's focus on what it is. Let me get to the point where I can show you why, or, you know, where that comes in. Then we can worry about updating the others, right? So go to security, into properties, go to advanced, come over again. We have inherited permissions. We knew that. Disable inheritance, convert those to explicit permissions, remove the Senate group. Now we go to add, select, and then we're going to add the Trade Federation group, right? And so here where it says this folder, subfolders, and files, and if we go to modify and go okay, and we apply this, and we come back over to our workstation, right? And we come in here, and so we've added the permission. We've taken out the Senate, which he was part of. We've added in the Senate Trade Federation group. So he should have permissions, but the problem is it hasn't been updated. So this would be the case of we've modified some permissions, so we need the user to log out, log back in, let Windows re-authenticate into Active Directory and check all of the credentials, what they're allowed to have. We could wait, but let's face it, users, when you're doing stuff like this, it's you don't have necessarily the luxury to be like, oh, we'll give it a half hour. Just go to lunch. When you come back, you should be fine. Because they're trying to do stuff, right? Or there may be other users that were working on something when you're like, you found out that the permissions were all doinked up. Or, the new hire shows up, they can't get into the thing. Obviously, and of course, the senator needs something now, 5 minutes ago, and I can't get to it. So you can't, you just not necessarily always going to have the luxury of being like, yeah, you just give it a half hour, come back and try and get it. Right? Okay, so public shares. Right, we go to Senate. Da, 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 da. And apparently we didn't add him into the proper group. So let's go back into Active Directory. Okay. Go to users, Senate Trade Federation, member of, and we did not. Bad admins. Senate.trade. I can't spell Senate. Fat finger all day long. Okay, there we go. So now he's a member of the Trade Federation. Let's close that to keep our workspace clear, focus back on what we want. Of course, now we still can't see it. Why? Because it has an update. We need to log out, log in again. And users love this, by the way. The more you can get them to log out, log in, or reboot, and then log in again, the better. Because they just enjoy it so much. Actually, we should be able to give them a picture, right? Other webpage, blah, 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 blah. Profile, nope. Count, definitely not. We may just have to do it from the Windows workstation, but we're not going to worry about that. So that's a whole other rabbit hole we don't really need to get into. Now, if we had Active Directory domain services in Office 365, we definitely have that picture. It would probably be better if I went ahead and mapped this to a drive letter, but okay. So we got the Senate. All right, we got Senate. Awesome. Trade Federation. Hey, we're making progress. We go into that. Hey, we didn't blow anything up. Okay, so now this is this folder, subfolders, and files, right? So if I come in here and I say, hey, I want to create a new document of something. Hey, you need permission to do that. Okay, apparently that's wrong. All right, which is kind of good, but new folder, permission denied. Okay, so we've got permissions wrong somewhere. Got modify. So let's go in, take a look. Okay, right. Okay. Let's expand this out. Delete subfolders and files. Okay, yeah, we should be able to do that. No. List folders, create files, create folders. Okay, so you should be able to do both of these. So if we look at the share and authenticated users only have read permission. This is the case of, so NTFS will let us do it. Share permissions will not. The more restrictive of the two, of the combination of the two, says no, you can't create files, you can't create folders. Okay, so we can't add or remove here, so we have to go into the sharing permissions of the share, and this is the properties of the folder. So if we come back up here, we go in public shares, right? Permissions, customize permissions, come into share. Okay, now we have authenticated users can read. So let's edit that, and we're going to give them change permissions, right? And we're going to have to log out, log in again, more likely. Nope. Okay, good. So one. Again, we're going to change our view to tiles. So we can create a folder. All right, cool, great. But then, good old Lot comes in here and he's feeling lazy one day and he's just like, I want to create a text document. Okay, well, that's kind of fine until people just start dumping documents in here. So if we just, find some random files to copy, don't cut. And actually, we need to update Windows 11 because we don't have tabs here, which is slightly annoying, but whatever. Tabs are a beautiful thing in File Explorer. Just saying. Okay, so we can go here, we can go Senate, and we can jump into the thing. Okay, so now we copy all this stuff. So, this has been used for a while, so on and so forth. They've been around for a minute. Dun, 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 dun. And now we have all of this stuff in here. So we don't know who's, so it's just additional clutter, right? And we get a new senator in and they're trying to find something quickly, or, a new person to assist the senator comes in and they come in here and they're just like, oh my goodness, what is all of this? Because now nothing's ever actually in a folder. They don't know what it relates to necessarily because we're bad at, somebody was bad at assigning file names. So say we don't want this, which is where our permissions come in here, where it says, this folder, subfolders, and files, right? So we come in here, we clean this up. Oops. Clean up a folder too. We'll just start from scratch, right? So we'll clean the whole thing out. All right, so now we come over here, we'll edit, we say, you know what? Just folder and subfolders. You're not allowed to do anything with files in this folder. Now we should still be able to come in here and say, okay, I want a new folder. Okay. Now I should be able to create a new text document here, which is fine. All right. So under demo, I have a Word document or a text document, right? My doc. All right. Awesome. So now, well, let's say I'm feeling kind of lazy. I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to bother with a folder. Now, That's not how that's supposed to work. So let's clean these up. Because again, this could just be the case of the fact that we have our permissions haven't updated per se. We haven't taken anything away though. And okay, now that we're logged in, let's try this experiment again. It's empty. So if we come in and we go new folder, demo. Nope, we can still create document. Oh, you know why? Because I'm an idiot. I didn't actually apply it. Oh, hey, look. So more options, refresh. Okay, well, that's gone. Interesting. So if we now try, nope, can't do it. Although can't find this item. Seems a little bit misleading. Let's see if we can do it here. Let's close that for a moment. So now you can't even see the documents. Not only can you just can't see them at all. So it's creating them, you can't see them. That's not what we want either. So we'll have to dial that in. All right, but a new folder. So folder 01, okay, fine. So we're good there. So now what? It's creating them, but we don't want to create them, right? We don't want it to even create the text file at all. So we don't want it to create it and then like instantly hide it and say, oh, I can't find it now. So we'll come back into edit. Let's show advanced permissions. All right, so let's not create files, but we can create folders. All right. Traverse folder. Okay, so we can traverse. Everything's good. All right, so we do that. All right, so we apply. So if we come back in into new text document, you need permission for this action. Okay, see, so here it says, no, you can't do that, right? Which is what we want. Like, look, we don't want you just dropping files out here. We want you to put them in an actual folder. I don't care if you have just like, the one folder that they all just instantly like, oh, I'm just going to dump everything into demo. Okay, fine, whatever. You don't have all of these here, right? Housekeeping inside your own folder is up to you. But we should still be able to create a new folder. So, yeah, we can do that. All right. Groovy. Now, can we create a new? So we should be able to create a new like file in general, whatever it is, right? But yeah, nope, that comes to a screeching halt. All right, how do we fix that? All right, so if we come into advanced, right? Well, so the Trade Federation folder, we just said this folder and subfolders, right? But we want to be able to create documents in subfolders. All right, so if we go to add, select principal, and see anybody in the Senate Trade Federation. Oop, that's not how that works. So anybody in the Trade Federation group. Okay, so here we're going to say subfolders and files only, right? And then we're going to give modified permissions. And just for giggles, we're going to show the advanced permissions. And we'll say, okay, they can create files, they can create folders. We can really uncheck this because they already have permission to do that, which is granted by this. But it doesn't hurt anything to leave it there. And really, if you start kind of getting down that whole weird rabbit hole, then you kind of make things brittle. So you have the option, you have the potential to make things extremely brittle. And then somebody comes in here and says, oh, well, I'm just going to change this thing over here. And then the whole thing falls apart and it's just a bad day. So we're okay. So now we should still not be able to create, and I'm going to expand this out so we can actually see that we're in the Trade Federation folder. Right? We can see that a little better. Go to new text document. Says no. Can't do that. Okay. Well, if I go into demo, right, I should be able to create one here. And ta-da! There we go. So, yeah, and if we go into a subfolder, we should be able to create a new text document, which we can. All right. So there's the behavior that we want. And that's depending on what you've got going on, but that's how you accomplish this particular thing. We don't want them to create, be able to create files here in the parent folder. In the subfolders, have at it. Do whatever, do just about whatever it is that you're going to do. Right? Because we really don't care. What we want is that somebody comes in here and if they go to create, like if they create a new document and they want to save it somewhere, we want to force them to put it into a folder and organize it. Now we could get really super granular here. We're not going to, obviously, but you can wire this thing up in all kinds of different ways so that, say the senator can go through and do this. And then like the senator's aide can actually also has permissions to go in and modify stuff because, the senator's busy, right? So the aide would go in here and maybe organize some of this stuff up and clean that stuff up. And maybe it's junior staff, so on and so forth. We may even want to maybe give them a set of permissions to where only they can create and delete stuff depending on what the needs are. But that's, you may have to come in here and you may have to say, okay, or well, not may have to come. You're going to find situations where the applies to, it's not all just going to be set to this folder, subfolders, and files is what I'm getting at. Sometimes it's going to be like, okay, this folder only, or subfolders only, and depending on what you're trying to accomplish. So there's your use case for that. Yay! We need to definitely create some other stuff here. But I think that will be a lesson for either tomorrow or next time. Well, for next time, for sure. as I think we're just going to call it for the night and start again fresh at some other point. So thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.